Welcome to TAOFit method. Today we're going to be working on gentle hip mobility, dealing with some hip pain, specifically in shin box position, especially on the transition. So we're going to start on the floor, on our back, with some gentle figure 4 mobility, and then we're going to work up to that shin box to see if we can get it to improve so that it doesn't hurt so much. So let's get started. We're going to start on our back, getting into our nice crocodile breath, making our big C shapes with our hands going below ribs, above hip bones. Again, getting that nice squeeze of the hands to create good resistance for the inhale phase of the breath, and imagining that we're inflating a balloon with each inhale, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And as you exhale, feel that navel drawing up and into the spine, almost like you're trying to press your spine into the floor as you exhale. And then again, inhale, filling up that balloon. Nice and slow in each direction. Can be a 5 up to 8 or even 10-second count for both inhale and exhale. And with each inhale, see if you can expand that balloon a little bit wider and a little bit wider. Want to get a good 5 up to 10. Nice, slow, deep breaths. Next, we're going to go ahead and start getting into a little bit of low back mobility and then working into our hips. So we're going to getting into like a little bit of modified happy baby. We can either grab the knees, we can grab the back of our thighs, we can grab shins. If you're able to get all the way to feet, we can grab feet. I'm starting with knees. My back's a little tight. I still want to focus on that nice inhale, expanding through the belly. Feel that abdominal wall expand. That should lightly push the knees away. And then on the exhale, draw that navel in. We're actively scooping and pulling the knees towards the chest. Again, inhale lets those knees move away. Exhale, feel that belly button pushing down into the spine, into the floor as you pull those knees in. As we're pulling those knees in, I want to see if we can get the sacrum to just lightly scoop off the floor into some gentle low back mobility. I do not want to move into pain. If that low back feels pinchy or painful, then you need to back off. Make that range of motion smaller so that you're not triggering into active pain. Now, as we're doing these, we can start to, as we pull those knees into our chest, we can move those knees more towards the left shoulder on one and then to the right shoulder on the next one. So both knees lightly pull towards the same side shoulder. Inhales, you let it back through the center, and then exhale as you lightly pull towards the opposite shoulder. This will get a little bit more of that stretch into each side of the low back. This is a good place to notice if one side feels tighter, more restricted, it's a little bit more sensitive, especially if you have some low back or some hip pain. More than likely, the side of the low back that is tighter is also going to be the same side of the hip that is painful. That's not always the case, but that's going to be most common. We'll go ahead and let those feet slowly back down to the floor. And now we're going to start into our figure 4 hip mobility. So I'm bringing my left ankle. I'm going to start right ankle up to the left knee. And we're just starting with simple rotation through the knee, pulling that knee towards the chest on our inhale. As we exhale, reaching that knee towards the wall at our feet. This should open up a little bit of just light, gentle mobility through the front and maybe lateral side of the hip. We're continuing to breathe into that crocodile breath on the inhale, exhale. Navel draws in as you're reaching that knee away. Kind of notice how far are you able to get that knee to push? How tight does it feel in the hip? Once we get about 5 to 10 reps, we can add a little bit of push with our hand. So actively reach that knee away. When you get to the very end, you're just going to add a little bit of traction. I want to make sure that this is not painful, so don't push hard. Inhale, we'll let that hand release, knee comes back, exhale, reach. And again, just light extra tension with that push. We're then going to switch our feet, going to the opposite side. Now, if any of these positions are painful, if it's painful just getting your ankle on the knee, then I want you to take a pause from this movement. This would be an area in which I want you to contact me. And I'm going to take a quick pause here to check in. And if any of this is painful, go ahead and unmute and let me know. If you're not feeling pain, don't feel the need that you need to unmute. Only if you're feeling pain on it. So left ankle on knee, doing the same thing. Nice exhale as we reach that knee away to the wall. Inhale as we pull that knee towards our head. And right away, you may notice that this side is tighter, or the other side was tighter. That one side is significantly tighter, more restricted than the other side. I want to, again, pay attention to pain. I've been having a lot of excess issues with my left hip. This position is definitely tighter, especially as I reach away, getting into that more lateral aspect of the hip. And once we get our 5 to 10 reaching to the wall, we can now add that hand, just a little bit of extra traction on that exhale. Inhale, bringing the knee back to the head. Exhale, nice reach and press away. Again, I want to make sure that we're not over pressing. I don't want to push into pain in the hips. Once we get our evened up, we're going to switch back to the other side. So coming back to that right ankle on the knee. Now we're going to lift our opposite foot off the floor, pulling that knee towards our chest. That's going to take the leg of the ankle side that's up, and that's going to bring us into some stretch into that more posterior area of the hip. So nice pull with the knees. You can add some hands in order to assist. So as you pull, you can either grab your ankle, you can even grab a little bit around the knee, maybe one hand on the ankle, one hand on the knee, assisting that nice light pull towards the chest. Inhale, allowing that foot back down to the floor. Again, notice how tight does it feel. I want to make sure we're not pushing into pain. Once we get about 5 to 10 reps, we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. And again, want to compare. My left hip was tighter, although coming back up to this side, it already feels a little looser than it did before. So hopefully you're feeling the same. Now we're pulling that opposite knee towards the chest. grab the ankles, grab the knee in order to give it a little bit of an assist. And each one, we're lightly squeezing into it a little bit more without pushing into pain. And again, how does this side feel compared to the other side? When we have hip pain, I want to assess kind of the full circumference of the hip. I want to assess the front of the hip, outside of the hip, back of the hip, inner thigh part of the hip. Where the pain is may not be where the problem lies. And so I want to kind of notice, where does the hip actually feel tight? If you're feeling a lot of tightness and restriction in some of these movements, that's not in the same place as the pain, I would consider that as relevant and probably connected to what is hurting. So getting these areas to move a little bit better should get us some relief in that pain, in the areas where it's painful. We'll go ahead and switch feet. We're going to switch back to the other side. So again, I got my right ankle on my right knee. And now we're going to get into some rotation. So I want to feel my shoulders nice and soft on the floor. We can even bring the arms out to the side. Nice inhale while we're at the top. Exhale, we're letting our hips rotate as if we're trying to drop our foot to the floor on the outside of our body. We're only going as far as we comfortably can. I want to make sure that this is not painful on the back. I want to try to keep the shoulders and the head on the floor. So we're only going as far as the shoulders stay down. Nice exhale. Start small on this. As you feel comfortable, connected, light stretch, then you can slowly move into it a little bit more, but we're making sure that we're not pushing into pain. If you're able to get that foot all the way to the floor, great. If not, I'm not worried about that. We're just getting some nice movement in the hip and into that low back together. After we get about 5 to 10 reps, we'll go ahead and switch, doing the same thing on the other side. Go to a different angle on this one. So I got left ankle on right knee. Again, arms are out to the side. Nice inhale at the top. Exhale as you slowly roll that hip. Again, start small on this side. And with each one, we can slowly go a little deeper based on control and not moving into pain. And this will be a real big one for noticing the difference on one side compared to the other, especially if you got pain to the outside of the hip. More than likely, whatever side that hip is sensitive on, it's tighter both to the outside of the hip and into that low back. So again, those are real important things to kind of take note of, because if we get those areas mobilized and moving a little bit better, it should help to free up the hip a little bit more. Since I talked about this left hip of being tighter, more restricted, and being a problem, I'm definitely feeling this in both the hip and in the low back on this side. It's a little bit tighter. I don't have quite as much range of motion as I did on the other side, although just from going slowly into it, it's loosening up. I'm getting a little bit more mobility, and it's actually feeling a little bit better. We'll bring both feet onto the floor. Now we're going to come up into a seated tall sit. Legs are straight. We're going to bring one foot up, and then we're going to cross it over the top of our opposite leg. Try to pull that foot back above the knee as much as you can comfortably. So I got my right leg over my left knee. I'm taking my left hand and arm, and I want to wrap it around that knee. I'm trying to grab it more at the elbow. If you need to start with hand, that is fine. We're seeing if we can get that wrap all the way up to the elbow. And we're doing a nice inhale. We're letting that knee move away from the body. And then on the exhale, we're cinching in. We're pulling that hand and that knee up to the chest. And at the same time, I want to pull our chest to the knee, trying to get nice and tall. Exhale, inhale. We're letting it soften. Let that arm out. We can let the chest drop a little bit. Exhale. Feel that lift, tall lift through the spine. As you pull that knee in, that should get us some length and stretch kind of to this outside area of the hip. Again, with that kind of pain to the outside of the hip, this is going to be an area that's probably going to be pretty tight and restricted, especially when we get to that painful side. So once we get a good 5 to 10 reps on this side, we're going to slowly move to the other side. Left ankle over the top of that right knee. Opposite arm moving all the way across. Grab around the top of that knee. Again, it can be hand. Even better if we're able to get that elbow so that we can really cinch and pull in tight. So again, inhale as we're kind of soft, knees moving away. Exhale. I'm getting tall, moving my chest to my knee as I pull my knee to my chest. I talked about this. You might be getting some stretch in that outside of the hip. You also might be feeling some stretch in that low back. Notice if you feel it on the same side low back as the hip, or if you feel it more to the opposite side. The interesting thing for this left hip on this one is I'm feeling it a lot more on my right side low back. And again, nice 5 up to 10 slow, gentle reps, not pushing into pain. Good. So we're now going to drop back down onto the floor, onto our back. And I'm bringing my arms straight out to the side with the palms up. And this is where I want to imagine that we're laying on a bed of sand, and I want to have a nice imprint of my entire upper body. Most important part of this movement is feeling upper back, spread, pushing down into the floor, arms, elbows, back of the hands, all pressing and engaged with the floor. We're then going to pull both feet up kind of into a nice tabletop. I really want those knees tucked in a little bit. I don't want to be at 90 degrees at the hips or more open where those legs are pushed out. The further out those legs go, the more it's going to lift the low back off the floor. The more we pull the knees in, you should be able to feel that low back a little bit tighter pressed into the floor. That's what I want to feel, is that low back kind of engaged. From here, again, arms are out, pressed into the floor. We're going to start with very slow and gentle hip rotation. I don't want to go far, especially right off the bat. Make sure that this is not painful on the back. We've already done a little bit of hip rotation with our figure 4, so hopefully the low back is already a little prepped for this. But I'm just going to start small as I let my hips rotate to the left. Inhale as I come back to the center. Exhale as I rotate to the right side. Again, keep it small. I want to notice where things feel tight first before I start pushing into stretch in order to avoid pain. This is a movement that if you go too far, too fast, you can definitely trigger some pain and you can trigger some inflammation in that low back that won't feel so pleasant. So I want to be safe and slow. As you start feeling into the edges and you can feel your core control and you and you know it's not painful at this point, we can very slowly work a little bit further into our edges. I don't want to force it. My biggest thing here is keeping the shoulders and the upper body engaged with the floor. I don't want that shoulder lifting up because you're letting your hips rotate too far. Find that point where you can control, even if you're not going very far, so that you can really notice how does it feel on the right side compared to the left side. And this will be a really valuable assessment here. If you have low hip pain, more than likely it's going to be tighter in one direction, going away from that hip, or you might find it's tighter moving towards that hip. My left hip has been the problem hip. Going away is where I feel tighter and more restricted, and I feel that more in my low back. So again, getting into that low back kind of gives me a little bit more indication that it's not just a hip issue, it's a hip and a low back issue. We'll go ahead and bring feet down to the floor. We're going to let both feet go nice and straight. And then we're going to bring one foot, bend one knee, bringing that foot flat to the floor and moving that foot to about 45 degrees from the midline of the body. Let me show that in a different position. So my legs are straight. I'm bending one knee, and then I want to move that foot out to 45 degrees. The other leg is staying in that nice straight line. We're going to place, so I got my right knee up. I'm going to put my right hand at the base of my rib cage. And we're going to work on some pelvic tilts and breath, and then we're going to get into some glute activation from here. So on my inhale, I want to fill up that belly. I want my pelvis to kind of lightly tilt forward. I want to feel that rib lifting up and away from the hip. And then as I exhale, we're lightly scooping that tailbone like we're trying to move that hip up to the ceiling. I want to feel that rib moving towards the hip. So inhale, we have like a little bucket handle lift of that rib cage. Exhale, that bucket handle is moving down. And as we're working that pelvic tilt, if you can feel that rib cage moving down, as you exhale, start to press through that foot and continue to scoop that hip like you're trying to get your hip to the ceiling, lifting that glute off, that hip off the floor. Now, as you're doing this, kind of come back and notice your opposite leg. As you're pressing through the floor with the right leg, make sure the left leg is not active. It should not be pushing down. That hip should not be lifting off the floor. It really shouldn't even be engaged. If you put your hand on that hip, if you feel the muscles light up and get tense, that means that leg is doing some work when it should not be. See if you can shut that leg off and just focus on the bent knee. And with each one, we're trying to get that scoop up a little bit higher. We're going to do a little higher reps on this one. This will be closer to 20 reps so that we can really start to move into that stretch at the top and start to feel some activation in the glutes. So again, keep that hand on the knee or the rib. Inhale, as the hip comes down, the rib's kind of flaring up. As we exhale, ribs should be moving towards that hip. And the more you're able to scoop at the very top, moving into that stretch, you should also start to notice your glute firing up. And I'll add one last little cue. So as you're scooping, feeling that rib drop, feel that glute at this top point, I want you to really push as hard as you can down into the floor with that foot. As long as you're not getting that activation in the opposite leg. I'll add that in. So I want to make sure that opposite leg is not assisting. Once you get to that top, you feel that scoop, you feel that little stretch, then you're putting as much downward force into the floor through that foot. Feel that hip really light up. Get a nice 20 reps. I want to feel good glute burn, getting some activation into the glutes. And then we're going to switch to the other side. So when we switch to the other side, go ahead and let both legs go straight so that you can bring them together. That's going to keep the opposite leg in the right position. Bending one knee, putting that foot flat to the floor, and then moving that foot out to about 45 degrees from that midline position. Same side hand is on the rib, starting with just nice inhale. Feel that belly kind of lift to the ceiling. Rib should flare up. Exhale. Feel that rib drop as you start to very lightly scoop at the pelvis. And with each one, we're going to lightly scoop a little bit more. Now, coming back to that hip pain. With hip pain, more than likely, the hip that is painful is going to be harder to control, to get to really to just sync this entire movement up. You might feel the knee is shaky. It might be real tight and restricted in the hip that just makes it hard to lift. You might feel that your foot's just not really pushing down into the floor very hard because you can't activate that glute. Or you might notice the opposite leg really wants to get engaged into assist. So if you're feeling any of that, this is a really important movement drill to practice daily in order to improve these things. So again, check into that opposite leg. Make sure it is not assisting. If it is, kind of just do your best to kind of shut it down. Focus on just this one side. Keep the movement small so that you're able to only work through one side. And as you build that control, you'll be able to make the movement a little bit bigger over time. As we're slowly starting to get that scoop further and further up to the top. This hip is significantly tighter on me. It is a lot harder. It feels a lot tighter, especially through this outside front of the hip. I also feel a little disengaged in my core. It's harder to feel that rib really wanting to drop down into the hip. Although, as I'm getting some reps, I'm starting to feel it sync up a little bit. This is the reason I want to do these activation drills, is to work the neurology. The more I program good neurology, the stronger that neurology will be, and the more likely it's going to be that it's going to hold up through the course of the day. As I'm getting to the top, I got a lot of restriction. I'd say it's level 1 pain. It doesn't really hurt so much as it just feels a little uncomfortable. It's so tight and restricted in this hip. So I'm continuing to build into that scoop, but not forcing it. Now, if you're able to get that nice scoop to the top and you're starting to feel that maximum stretch and you're getting that glute to start to fire up at the very top, now we're going to add in that maximum press, really engage, pushing down into the floor, and then inhale as you disengage, letting it drop. Exhale, feel that hip move up. And then once you get to the top, add that little bit of hard press, really downwardly pressing into the floor. Again, make sure that opposite leg is not trying to assist. And once we get closer up to our 20 reps, we're going to switch back to the other side. Actually, I'm going to stay in that direction because we're going to add another layer to this movement. So coming back to both legs are straight. We're bending one knee. and then moving that foot out to about 45 degrees from the midline of the body. We're going to take the opposite hand and we're going to let that opposite hand come overhead. Now, if shoulders feel tight and this arm doesn't really want to rest overhead, it can come out to the side just a little bit. But I want to be able to have some space here because we're going to add in a rotation. But first, we got to start with that scoop. So we'll keep that hand for now on that rib. I want to get back into that nice scoop, press that hip, feel that foot engage with the floor. And then when we add that max pressure down, now we're going to let our head come off the floor, shoulder comes off the floor, and we're seeing how far can we reach without going into pain in that low back or in the hip. Letting that hand slide as we exhale. Inhale, we're letting everything back down. Hip comes down to the floor, rib flares. Exhale, feel that hip scoop to the ceiling. Once you get to the top, maximum press. I want to feel that press hard into the floor as you reach. This one feels real good and juicy. I got some tightness and tension in my mid back. This is definitely getting into right now. Again, feel that maximum pressure down as you get that nice reach across. And this can be 5 up to 10 reps. I want to feel that glute really still staying active. I don't want that knee to cave in as we rotate. We've got to be able to keep that downward pressure. So the knee's got to be straight up to the ceiling, pushing down as we're reaching across. If you can imagine, that push through the foot is putting us into a rotation pattern through the hips, and then reaching through the hand is a counter rotation, and we're basically wringing that midsection out like a washcloth. We'll go ahead and switch sides. Again, bring those feet together so the legs are perfectly straight. One foot spins, bring it flat to the floor, moving it out to 45 degrees. Opposite arm is overhead. Starting with that nice scoop as we exhale. When you get to the top, maximum press as you then rotate away. Again, go slow at first to make sure you're not moving into pain. Inhale as you let everything back down to the floor. Exhale, feel that scoop, drive, maximum press, and then nice slow reach. And with each one, you're seeing if you can slide those fingers a little further while still maintaining maximum pressure through the foot into the floor. You might notice that one side is harder to maintain that pressure through the foot as you rotate. And that's going to be, again, another important assessment. So my left hip is the tighter hip. As I press, I'm getting a lot more glute engagement than I was at the very beginning. However, as I rotate, it's hard. I'm just not getting as much rotation. If I rotate to the same amount, I'm losing connection with that foot. So I got some tightness and tension in here in that midsection that is affecting my glute, my hip and my glute function. Or it could be that my hip and my glute function are affecting that midsection of the low back. The more important thing is that there is a relationship pattern in there that I can work on. Once we even those out, we're now going to come up into a quadruped position. So coming to hands and knees, spreading fingers nice and wide, extending elbows fully, pressing into the floor. Back toes are tucked. And we're going to get some nice pelvic tilts from this position. So we've already got a decent amount of movement on the low back, but I still want to be gentle. So inhale, I'm letting that belly move to the floor. Pelvis is tilting down so that we get a little bit of sway in the back. Make sure that we're not moving into pinch or pain. Exhale, nice slow scoop I'm only moving into my low back. I'm not doing a full cat-cow just yet. Inhale, feel that belly open up and expand as much as you can on that inhale breath, as long as it is not painful. Exhale, feel that scoop. It's like you're trying to turn that tailbone and scoop up sand, or reach the tailbone as far forward as you can. Can you feel some good stretch in that low back without moving into pain? This is my low back is very sensitive here. Not painful sensitive, it's just tight and restricted. Again, kind of that level 1. It's not really pain, but it is a little discomfort. And discomfort, technically is a level of pain. Now, as we're getting into this, I want to start thinking about moving. As we scoop, we're going to move that stretch one vertebrae at a time up our spine. So as we scoop, we're already getting into that low back. So now I want to feel it move up into like the T12, right at the base of the rib cage. Inhale, same thing. As we open up that belly, see if you can feel that rib lightly reach to the floor. Does that open up that low back a little bit more without pinch or pain? Next one, as we exhale, we're seeing if we can come up one vertebrae higher. Can you get up a little bit more into that mid-back section? Same thing on that inhale. Can you feel that same location move towards the floor? And each one, we're going to go one vertebrae at a time higher. As we get more towards the shoulder blade section, we can start to lightly push into the floor. And then inhale, start to let that sternum drop through the shoulder blades like it's reaching to the floor. And we're going to work little bit by little bit. As we get up to the head, we'll start to let that head drop more, reaching our forehead to our tailbone. As we're reaching our tailbone to our forehead, like we're trying to touch this imaginary point right in the middle. Good. So now we're going to do that same basic movement, but we're going to turn it into a circle. So I want to think of the spine kind of like a jump rope. So we're going to be doing more circle patterns with it. So we're still on hands, extended elbows, toes are tucked. We can start with our scoop, getting into that nice cat position, and then feel your ribs move out to the side, and then feel them drop to the floor as they roll all the way to the opposite side and lift back into that scoop, big cat position. It's like I have a jump rope and I'm trying to spin that jump rope as wide as I can. Notice how slow I'm moving. I want to go nice and slow. I really want to feel the edges. How far can I feel that rib cage move out to the side? Feel it drop, reach across to the opposite side, and then lift. And just notice where it feels tight and restricted. Again, this should feel good and juicy and pleasant, not painful and stressful. If it's painful and stressful, then back off, make it smaller. See if you can find a range of motion in which it feels good, not painful. Once we get about 5 to 10 reps in one direction, we're going to reverse directions. And going slow and small again. Keep it small to start with. And then each circle can slowly get a little bigger, as long as we're not taking it into pain. And this one's a good one to kind of notice if one direction of your circle feels more tighter and restricted than the other direction of your circle. Definitely feel it right through here, right side low back. It's one of my little areas that chronically gets tight and restricted. So it's always needing to get a little bit of extra work done on it. Good. So we'll come back to our starting point on hands and knees. We're going to walk our hands out forward just a little bit. Keep those hands nice and spread. And I want some downward pressure into the floor. We're going to come back and do a little bit more pelvic tilt again. So pelvis is tilting to the floor. That rib cage is going to lift. And then as we exhale, we're scooping. And I want to feel that rib moving towards the hips. Core should kind of get a little bit engaged. Inhale, opens it up. Belly kind of extends to the floor, sway in the back, and then exhale, scoop. See if you can feel some of that light stretch again into that low back area. And we're going to add a little child's pose move into it next. So as you inhale, when you exhale and scoop, I want to actively scoop. Feel that core engage as you then drop chest lightly to the floor. Inhale, we're coming off the shoulders, back into that nice belly open, sway back. Exhale, scoop, and then reach the chest to the floor. I want to keep those hands actively pressing down so that we feel this stretch more in the shoulder region. And the more we got that active scoop, core should be engaged, and that will isolate the shoulders a little bit more. Notice if one shoulder feels tighter and more restricted than the other shoulder. If you feel anything significant that's different in one shoulder to the other, I would assume that is probably also related to what's going on in the hip. So working the shoulders, getting the shoulders a little bit more mobile and looser should also help with the hips. All right, we're going to come out of that position, and now we're going to get into a V-sit. Now, how wide we get on this V-sit is going to depend on that hip pain. So I don't want to expose the hip to where it hurts just from the position. So I want to go as wide as we comfortably can. Once we're here, I'm trying to actively reach the knees to the floor and actively pull my feet to the shins. That will kind of get the quads lit up, but I want to keep that engagement. Hands come behind the hips to the floor. So we're lightly pressing into the floor to hold ourselves tall. And I want to see if we can keep that chest nice and tall. Elbows are actively spiraling out and away so that we get that more packed shoulder, tall spine. And we're going to focus on our kneecaps. Nice inhale into our crocodile breath. Exhale, we're spiraling those knees out and away like we're trying to touch the floor to the outside of the legs. Inhale, back to center. Exhale, spiraling those knees in like we're trying to touch the floor. Keep it small, especially if we have hip pain. I do not want to trigger pain, which means that you may have be very limited in how far you can go on either of these directions. Notice if there's clunkiness. Does it feel like it has a clunk to it? Is there a hard stop where it just feels tight and restricted on one side and doesn't want to go any further? Again, those are details that are going to be very helpful. And you can even just look and see, do both knees travel the same distance internally and externally? Or does one knee go further in one direction than the other one does? Now we're going to add in our ankles. I want to be light on this because it's not uncommon to get some like Charlie horse in the arch of the foot. So I don't want to push into this to where we get a spasm. But as we spiral those knees out and away, We're then lightly pointing the toes as we spiral the knees back in, and then we're pulling the toes back, making a nice circle with the ankles. If that feels okay and you're not getting like that Charlie horse feel on the feet, you can start to lightly add in some flex at the toes, feeling the toes flex, and then spread as you pull. This should get us some nice flossing effect at the ankle space, especially the more we're able to point through the toes. If you're not able to point hard because you get that kind of Charlie horse, then just stay light in it. You're still getting that good flossing effect through the ankle. And if you work on this regularly, that should really help free the ankle up to where you're able to get this movement without that Charlie horse feel. Once we get a good 5 to 10 reps in one direction, we're going to switch directions. Again, nice, slow. Start to add that point and flex of the toe as you reach away. It's like you're almost like you're trying to extend your toes out away from the body. You're trying to get as long as you can on that point and then pull. You're trying to bring those toes all the way back to your knees as you spread them wide. Once we even out on that one, we're going to stay in this nice, wide, comfortable position. If you're able to readjust and get a little bit wider, then great. Don't force it. We're going to get into some light folds. Nice inhale into that crocodile breath. Exhale. Both hands very slow, reach forward. Inhale, bringing it back up. Again, I want to stay shallow on this to start with. I don't want to force it. We're going to feel this in the back of the hamstrings or in that low back area. With each one, we can slowly reach a little bit further. As we're doing so, notice if one side feels tighter, more restricted than the other. Might not feel that quite so much when we're working straight through the center. So then we're going to start going off the center line, going side to side. And as I go side to side, I want my hands and my shoulders to stay square. I don't want to move my hands and have one hand reaching further. I want to turn shoulders with, and I want my shoulders and my hands moving at the same distance, same length, so that I'm really getting that movement going into that opposite side low back. As I inhale, coming back to the center, turning to the other side. And you might notice, especially if you got a tight hip, one side way different than the other side. My right side, I can turn. It's a little tight in my low back, just general, but I got good range. Hamstring feels pretty good. But as soon as I turn left, I'm feeling it already in that low back area, mid back area. And it's tighter, more restricted, and left side hamstring is a little tighter than the right side is. So I know that this side is different than this side, and that's going to be relevant, again, into that hip stuff, the pain, low back stuff as well. Again, I want to stay soft with it. I'm not trying to force it. I don't want to overreach. You can pull a hamstring in this position, so I want to be gentle with it. I don't want to get forceful. Good. Once we're done with that, we are now going to come back and see if we can get into our shin box position. So I'm starting on my left side shin box. Left hand is down, grounded into the floor. Let that back hip be free from the floor a little bit. And we're going to start with just very gentle knee openers. Inhale into that crocodile breath. Exhale, navel draws to spine. As that knee, slow lift. Don't worry about how high you go. Inhale, right back down to the floor. And with each one, I want to make sure we're not going into pain. So if this is painful, then back off. If all you're able to do is come off the ground an inch or even just a millimeter, then that's fine. That's as far as we go. Notice that hip. How does it feel? I want this to feel pleasant and good and juicy, not painful or stressful. Again, 5 to 10 nice slow reps. Once we get 5 to 10 reps, want to go very slow. Now, I know that this is the position in which is painful. So let both hands come back through, kind of lean back, super slow. If this is painful going through this position, then we're going to want to change how we transition. Once we get to the other side, again, I want to make sure that we're not in pain on that painful hip. Coming back into our breath, breathing into that crocodile breath, exhale, navel to spine, as we slowly lift that knee up to the ceiling. Inhale as we let it back down. So again, my left hip, it's tighter than my right one was, although because of all the other movement that we did, it's feeling a lot looser. I'm actually surprised with how much range I have on this side at this point compared to what it felt at the beginning of the session. Once we get 5 to 10 reps, we're going to switch to the other side. Now, if that transition was painful, what we can try is, can we just straighten both of the legs and then roll to the other side? And then can we pull those knees back into our shin box? Is there another way that we can go from one position to the other without triggering in that pain? Now, as we get to the other side, we're going to do the same movement a second time. I find that that particular mobility drill really improves more doing it twice. So again, nice inhale into that crocodile breath, exhale, navel to spine, nice slow lift of that knee. And right off the bat, my right leg, I got about 10, 15 degrees more range just from coming back and doing this a second time. And I want to continue. I'm not trying to force it. This is not pushing it. This is just where my hip feels comfortable. I get a light stretch. I'm not getting anywhere near pain. Once we get to 5 up to 10 reps, again, nice slow transition back to the other side. Same thing, nice grounded palm. That back hip is free. Exhale as we slowly lift. And again, I got another 10, 15 degrees on this side as well, even though this is the tighter side. So hopefully just going back and forth a second time, making the hip a little bit more mobile, giving you a little bit more access to movement. Definitely feel still tighter on this side, especially at that end range. I feel a lot more right in that groin area. But overall, pretty similar range of motion to the other side. And then we'll slowly transition back across. And we're going to finish with our folds. So folds, I'm going to try to use that shin as more of our angle. Nice inhale in through the nose, exhale, reaching both hands through that shin. Inhale, bringing it all the way back. And with each one, again, I want to start slow, easy. Make sure this is not painful on the hip itself. And we're just start with 5 reps on this side, using it more as an assessment, seeing how far can we go and what does it feel like in that hip. And then we'll slow transition to the other side. Hopefully that hip is starting to feel a little better. Maybe that transition feels a little smoother. Same thing, moving through that shin. Nice slow exhale as we reach through the fingers. Inhale as we bring it back. Now, this is a great place to have feedback, especially with that tight hip. My left hip is tight on the outside of the hip. But as I get into this fold, my right glute is tighter than it was on the other side of the same position. And that tells me that what's going on in this left hip is also has a relationship to what's going on in my opposite side glute, which makes a lot of sense because this is the knee that's had 5 surgeries. So this glute tends to be a little bit harder to keep online. It has more tension to stabilize for my knee, and my hip is a part of that. It's trying to stay tight in order to support an unstable knee. Once we get our 5 reps, now we're going to see if we can start to slowly go back and forth through each side. Now, again, we can work letting those legs go straight, doing a more open switch to the other side, or we can have our windshield wiper transition. But I want to, whichever way we're going, I want to try to avoid moving through that pain. As we get to one side, nice slow exhale into our fold. Inhale as we bring it up. And then whatever transition is not painful to the other side, doing the same thing. Again, this is one where I want to go a little bit higher in reps, 10 up to 20 reps back and forth. Especially if we can find a nice groove and flow that is not painful. Just getting into this gentle rhythm of back and forth through the hips, as long as it's not pushing into pain, helps to coat the joints with lubrication, gets them flowing, warms them up, gets a little stretch in all the tissues, all the supporting tissues. Really helps to mobilize the body so that you can, move well through the day. Now, we can start to add in this last part, but I want to be very cautious to make sure it's not painful on that hip. We can start to open up our shin box angle by letting that back knee slide open a little bit. However, that's going to put more stress in that front of that hip, specifically where we might have some pain. So if sliding it back amps up the pain, then we're going to keep it tight where it's not painful and just keep going. But if it's not, if you're able to get the little bit more of that mobilization and stretch on that back hip without it being painful, then we want to go into it lightly, comfortably, getting into that nice juicy space of that movement. And if you're able to open up that back hip more and more, we can continue to let it slide back and open till we get closer and closer to what we would consider that yoga class pigeon pose. And once we're got both sides, I got to finish on the other side because that's the side I started on. We can then come back to our back, feet to the floor, and we'll finish with some nice crocodile breaths. Again, making nice big C shapes with the hands below the ribs and above the hip bone. Feel that balloon expanding out and away on the inhale. Exhale, navel draws into spine. Feel those hands cinch in so that you can feel that expansion on the next inhale. And again, each inhale, seeing if we can get a little more inflation in that balloon. That low back, if that low back is tight, tense, or mid back for that matter, then working on breath is going to be important. more than likely you're feeling some stretch on that inhale phase, and you can very intentionally focus that breath to go in and mobilize that tightness and tension in that low back space. Just focusing that breath specifically where that tension is. See if you can feel that stretch, light stretch, not pain, and then exhale, navel into spine. And let your arms relax down. Let the shoulders soften. Continue to get a few breaths, filling up that ribs, upper back. Let that breath move up into the shoulders, into the neck, as well as down into the pelvic bowl. And each exhale, feel that tension melt from the body to the floor. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes, slowly get up. Again, make sure that you're not dizzy or lightheaded before you come up to a seated or a standing position.